Welcome back to Drama with Tet and Tina, where love doesn't just die, it spawns in a dungeon, grabs a loot crate of lies, and tanks your credit score. Today's story is told by a woman whose husband didn't just cheat. He used their house savings to build his mistress the ultimate gaming rig. While she worked 12-hour shifts, he was grinding more than just XP. This tale includes passive-aggressive NPCs, digital sugar babies, and a divorce lawyer who billed by the smirk. Buckle up. This one ends with pixelated karma, public humiliation, and a courtroom moment that deserves its own cutscene. They say love is blind, but in my case, love was sleep-deprived, overworked, and way too impressed by a guy who knew how to reset a router. We met during my second year at Baxter and Drell, an aggressively beige insurance company where dreams went to die in quarterly reports. I was HR, he was IT. I was fire drills and onboarding forums. He was silent hallways, backdoor patches, and the only man in the building who didn't flinch when the printer screamed. Like he had this detached, ironic smirk, like he knew something everyone else didn't. Turned out he just didn't care. But I mistook it for wisdom. I asked for help with a broken monitor. He asked if I wanted to grab sushi. One sticky rice disaster later, we were inseparable. At first, he was everything I thought I needed. Chill, funny, the exact opposite of every emotionally constipated finance bro I dated before. He didn't get flustered when I vented about work, didn't interrupt, didn't mansplain HR policy. Our first year was a montage of lazy Sundays, terrible cooking, and an uncomfortable amount of joint YouTube watching. We binged conspiracy documentaries and bad anime and laughed like idiots over wine I couldn't afford. He moved in after 6 months. By then, I'd convinced myself this was it, the grown-up relationship. No drama, no games. Except, of course, the one he downloaded during our first anniversary trip and just wanted to try. While I took a bath, the game started small, some obscure MMO with a medieval name, so dramatic it sounded like a failed Netflix pilot. Thrones of the Mythic Reign, or some equally cringe nonsense. He made a character called Grimdad. I wish I were kidding. It became our running joke. My boyfriend, the virtual warlord. I thought it was harmless. He'd log in for an hour or two after work, mumble about raids and guild drama, then pass out, snoring beside me. But that hour turned into 3, then 5, then full nights where I'd wake up alone and find him wide-eyed in front of the monitor, whispering into his mic with that low, intimate tone I hadn't heard directed at me in months. I asked if he was okay. He said it helped him decompress. I didn't push. I should have. By year 2, we were living in 2 different time zones, me in the real world, him in whatever fantasy server Serpentbane Hollow was hosted on. I'd come home from 12-hour days spent herding middle-aged managers through compliance training, only to find him deep in a dungeon with 5 strangers and a woman named Seraphina, casting healing spells on his wounded paladin ego. Our dinner table became his snack station. Our couch became his command center. Once, I tried to initiate date night, and he responded with, "Can it wait? We're mid-boss." I stood there, holding a pizza and slowly realizing I had become background ambiance in my own life. I wasn't just working more, I was working harder. I got promoted to HR regional manager in year 3, and with that came endless travel, back-to-back Zoom calls, and a salary that actually made me feel like an adult. Meanwhile, his role in software support became increasingly optional. He kept telling me he was between contracts, which loosely translated to between raids. He took extended breaks to avoid burnout, which was rich coming from a man whose biggest weekly stressor was whether the loot pool had been nerfed. He still made good money when he worked, but I was covering more and more bills while he spent afternoons prepping for a tournament. A tournament with no prize money and no career upside. Just pixels, validation, and a growing number of women in his Discord DMs calling him Daddy Tank. It didn't hit all at once. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Skipped anniversaries, missed weddings, broken plans. He forgot my birthday one year because a global server reset overlapped with it. I told myself it was temporary, that once he got it out of his system, we'd recalibrate. But things didn't get better. They got weirder. Packages started arriving, expensive ones. Graphics cards, mechanical keyboards, collector's edition game sets. I asked about them. He shrugged. Said they were investments for his streaming setup. That everyone was doing it. Meanwhile, our joint savings account, the one we were building for a house, started shrinking faster than a speedrun timer. I confronted him. He swore it was all necessary expenses. I believed him. That was my mistake. The gaslighting was subtle at first, so smooth it almost sounded like love. You're just stressed. You've been working so much lately. You're reading too much into things. He always said it with a soft voice and a tilted head, like I was the one who'd lost the plot, like I'd forgotten how to have fun. But the numbers didn't lie. The Amazon receipts didn't lie. The PayPal logs didn't lie. And when I found a $300 0 cents charge to something called Gilded Foxes G, I stopped asking questions and started digging. He said it was for in-game cosmetics. Funny, because I don't know many in-game items that ship express with gift notes saying, "For my little fox, you deserve the best." That was the first time I really heard her name, Becca, or Serafina, depending on what reality you lived in. I found her through a series of very stupid oversights on his part: a synced browser history, a saved Instagram login, and a publicly viewable friend list on Discord. I clicked, expecting a troll. Instead, I found a living Pinterest board: glittery eyeshadow, witchy poses, flowy crop tops, and captions like manifesting love, abundance, and epic loot drops. Her page was a highlight reel of cottagecore thirst traps and vague spiritualism. She tagged herself as a soul alchemist and an intuitive dream witch. I'm not even sure she knew what those meant, but she had 14,000 followers who seemed to eat it up. And one very married man funding her Whole Foods lifestyle, one microtransaction at a time. It became an obsession. I couldn't stop. I combed through every comment she left under his game clips, every like, every OMG, you're so funny. I watched them flirt in front of thousands like I didn't exist, like our mortgage fund wasn't being siphoned off for stream donations and custom art commissions of their characters kissing under moonlight. And I still wanted to be wrong. I still wanted some outlandish explanation, some digital misunderstanding I could chalk up to codependency and poor boundaries. But when I found the private messages, archived, thank God, in a backup folder he forgot to lock, I knew. He called her his escape. She called him her anchor. They had pet names, rituals, plans, convention meetups, hotel bookings, flight itineraries. They were in love, and I was the roommate picking up takeout for two. When I say I went full spy thriller, I mean I practically needed a soundtrack. I didn't just want confirmation. I wanted proof, the kind that could survive a courtroom cross-examination and still get quoted in Reddit comment threads. So I took a half day from work, feigned a migraine, and called in backup, Jay and Mia, my two chaotic good friends in IT. They owed me favors. I brought boba, pad thai, and an NDA I wrote myself on company letterhead. Once they heard the phrase, "He spent our house fund on a lizard woman who calls herself Serafina," they cleared their schedules like I just handed them backstage passes to the apocalypse. They spoofed his login credentials faster than I could finish my Thai tea. Within minutes, we were in. And what we found? Oh, it was a digital crime scene. Thousands of messages, chat logs going back years. He had entire emotional sagas archived in that account. Times he felt misunderstood, how I nagged him, how he dreamed of starting over with someone who got him. They exchanged in-game love letter, literal prose. I read one where he described their avatars laying together by a waterfall. He ended it with, "I wish this was real." She replied, "It is my heart tank." I nearly choked on a spring roll. Mia screamed. Jay rage-typed a breakup message draft and had to be physically stopped from hitting send. But the most revolting part wasn't the fantasy, it was the finances. These weren't just digital tokens, he was sending her real money. Support gifts, convention help, self-care packages. One $1,100 0 cents PayPal transfer was labeled for your Moonstone Ritual and Wellness Retreat. I wanted to scream. I'd put off therapy to save money while he was out here funding some Etsy witch's Reiki brunch. Mia traced the transfers, Jay flagged the IPs. They found photos, private Dropbox links labeled cosplay drafts, and a file folder labeled Seattle 2022 that included dinner reservations, hotel upgrades, and rideshare confirmations. I sat there in a fluorescent lit conference room, surrounded by screen glare and the soft buzz of betrayal, realizing I'd been emotionally replaced by a woman who sells jars of moss for $60 0 cents and spells magic with a K. Bia, real name Rebecca Penrose Everhart III, according to a very illuminating alumni database, wasn't just some sad e-girl playing the victim in elf ears. She was a con artist with a better brand strategy than most startups. Thanks to Mia's elite creeping and Jay's unhealthy obsession with metadata, we pieced together the truth. Bia had multiple ongoing relationships across different servers. And I don't mean flirty, hey, cutie messages. I mean simultaneous digital engagements. On one, she was married to a rogue named Wildvein. On another, she was soul bonded to a druid named Bear Daddy 69. She ran her love life like a stock portfolio, diversified, high yield, and absolutely unethical. Her playbook was genius in a sociopathic way. She rotated her boyfriends depending on which conventions they could afford to attend. East Coast, West Coast, Europe. She had a presence. Always stayed at different hotels. Always staggered her arrivals. Told one she was going to a cosplay panel, told another she was running a healing booth. Meanwhile, she was double booking back-to-back dinner dates like a romantic Uber route planner. The craziest part? None of them knew. She had them wrapped around her fake freckled finger. I even found one message where she warned my husband not to post certain photos publicly because Wild would lose it. My husband replied, I understand, my secret princess. He was a grown man. Calling someone a secret princess? I saw red. Every time I thought I'd reached my rage ceiling, I found another layer. This woman didn't even need money. Her dad was a former CFO of a tech giant. She had trust funds, a condo in Sedona, and a brand new Tesla, gifted by the universe and probably daddy's accountant. Yet, here she was, draining the finances of half a dozen gullible men with sob stories about rising rent and chakra realignment. My husband had sent her over $6,000, 0 cents in the past year alone. He couldn't afford his half of our anniversary getaway, but he could drop $1,000 on a limited edition cosplay prop and still Venmo her $80, 0 cents for post-con exhaustion kombucha. I wasn't mad he cheated. I didn't want to confront him in rage. I wanted it to be controlled, calculated, and humiliating in a way that left a scar on his ego every time he booted up that cursed game. So I waited until he came home from a weekend work trip to San Diego Serafina Con 2. I had everything ready, the screenshots, the chat logs, the PayPal history, even a printed photo of Becca kissing some other dude in full armor behind a booth labeled Love and Legends. I laid it all out on the kitchen table like a crime scene, labels, sticky notes, and a bottle of wine for theatrical flair. He walked in, saw it, and froze like he just got flashbanged by reality. At first, he did what all dumb men do when cornered. He lied, said it was just online stuff, just fantasy, just a joke. I let him talk, let him spiral, let him trip over every version of the truth he'd crafted in his head. When he paused for air, I pulled out the screenshots of Becca calling him her soul anchor, and then one of her with Bear Daddy 69 at the exact same convention. Same costume, different man's lap. His face cracked like a dropped phone. Then came the sob story. How he felt unseen, pressured, small next to my success. He said Becca made him feel important. I told him if he wanted to feel important, he could try making a mortgage payment instead of buying someone else's fantasy elf armor. Then came the pitch. He begged for a second chance, said he'd delete everything, go no contact, sell the PC, go to therapy, quit the game. He even got on his knees, literal carpet-burning knees, crying like I had just canceled Christmas. And for one brief, ridiculous moment, I almost softened until my phone buzzed with a text from Mia. She's still calling him her number one. That was the moment I stood up, stepped back, and told him, without yelling, without swearing, without shaking, you had a whole virtual fantasy and you still weren't her only one. That's how forgettable you are. Then I went upstairs and started packing. By the time I filed for divorce, I was operating like a Fortune 500 CEO in the middle of an acquisition. Efficient, emotionless, and armed with a fleet of consultants. My lawyer, Marissa, was a legend. Wore suits like armor, heels like cleats, and looked at my documentation like it was a buffet of evidence. We're going for the jugular, she said. And we did. I froze our accounts, flagged our joint credit cards, and moved my direct deposit to a private account before he even noticed the Wi-Fi had slowed down. I left the house for a condo downtown with hardwood floors and no RGB lighting. He texted me 42 times in the first week. I answered none. When he finally got served, he had the audacity to act blindsided. Claimed I blindsided him, that I didn't fight for our marriage, as if I hadn't been silently battling for it every single day. He logged off our life and logged into his digital delusion. He tried to delay the proceedings, begged for mediation, even offered to go on a digital detox if I just paused the process. Marissa laughed. She said, "We don't pause betrayal. We prosecute it." And that's exactly what we did. Every purchase, every transfer, every hotel reservation tied to Becca became a documented weapon. He tried to say she manipulated him. I showed the judge receipts proving he bought her a $200 0 cents stuffed wyvern plush after she'd already sent him voice notes of her with other men. Court was a circus. He came in looking like he hadn't slept in a month, pale, twitchy, wearing a blazer with an anime pin still attached. Becca didn't show up in person, but her digital fingerprints were everywhere. We submitted excerpts from the chat logs. Marissa read them out loud in court, deadpan and merciless. "You are my true knight, my pixel protector," she quoted, looking directly at the judge. I thought the court reporter was going to choke. His lawyer tried to pivot, claiming emotional distress, claiming Becca used spiritual manipulation. The judge raised an eyebrow and asked if that was a legal term. He walked out, owing me half the savings, full ownership of the car, alimony for 2 years, and one hell of a legacy as the man who lost his marriage to a cosplay grifter with a trust fund and a working polycule. The post-divorce fallout was better than therapy. His Twitch channel, which had peaked at 13 followers and a deeply cursed Grimdad Gaming banner, quietly died. No streams, no views, just a barren wasteland of empty chairs and sad VODs. Word got out about the divorce. Not from me. I never said a thing. But online drama spreads like mold in an MMO server. Apparently, a few of Becca's other soulmates compared notes, then screenshots leaked. Then someone made a Google Doc with timelines, receipts, and quotes like, "You're my only real connection in this realm." By the time Reddit got a hold of it, Becca had deactivated 2 accounts and was taking a break to focus on her spiritual center. Translation: hiding. Her Etsy shop took a nosedive, too. Turns out, when you sell fake crystals while emotionally defrauding half a guild, people get petty. 1-star reviews flooded in. "This rose quartz smells like lies." "Necklace broke, much like her promises." "Product arrived late, much like her morality." I watched with wine in hand and a smirk on my face. Karma didn't just roll through. She logged in, max leveled, and drop-kicked Becca's online persona into oblivion. I didn't even have to lift a finger. The internet did what it does best. Devoured its own drama with popcorn and zero remorse. And my ex? He kept trying to reach out. Emails, texts, even a LinkedIn message that read, "Just wanted to connect and see how you're growing." Growing? I was thriving. I'd bought new furniture, rebranded my life, and started dating a quiet engineer who thought MMOs were what his nephew played on weekends. I never replied. Not because I was still angry, but because why would I? Talking to him again would be like willingly re-downloading a buggy game you already rage quit. I left him on red. He could talk to Seraphina's ghost, his Funko Pop collection, or his now dormant Discord group, which I'm pretty sure renamed itself to Do Not Resurrect. I didn't realize how deep I'd sunk until I started sleeping through the night again. No blue screen glow at 2 a.m., no muffled headset laughter from the living room, no waking up to the cold imprint of someone who used to love me in between raid times. I stopped budgeting for 2, stopped waiting for texts that never came, stopped minimizing myself just so he could feel like more. And slowly, I started reclaiming the small things, buying fresh flowers just because, cooking meals that didn't involve microwaving frozen dinners while he queued up for another digital siege. My life was quieter now, but not lonely, just uncluttered, free of headset wires and half-truths, and the stink of someone else's dopamine loop. I started therapy, not the cheap phone-it-in kind. Real therapy with someone who didn't blink when I said, "He cheated on me in a dungeon with a moon priestess named Seraphina." We unpacked everything, my people-pleasing, my savior complex, how I turned exhaustion into a love language and called it support. It hurt, but it also healed. I realized I had built my life around someone who refused to log into reality, and I had been patching over every broken pixel like that somehow made it okay. Didn't, and it never would have, so I stopped trying to fix what he kept choosing to break. Instead, I built something new for me. I bought a house, just me, my dogs, and an espresso machine I named Alimony. The guest room has a desk with a top tier graphics card, not because I need it, but because I could afford it without sacrificing rent. I host wine nights, I plant succulents. I log into that cursed MMO once in a while, not to play, but to walk through the world like a ghost in my own past. My character wears plain armor, no buffs, no weapons, and parks herself on a hill overlooking a virtual lake. Sometimes guildmates pass by and wave, sometimes they don't. But I sit there quietly, sipping tea in real life and smile, because the best revenge wasn't making them suffer, it was making myself matter again. And that's how I lost a husband, found a spine, exposed a crystal fueled con artist, and walked away with the peace I'd been begging for in all the wrong places. He thought he was escaping into a fantasy. Turns out I was the one who respawned, leveled up, geared out, and ready for a life where I don't have to compete with fake princesses and loot box side chicks. I didn't win because I destroyed him. I won because I rebuilt me. So if you're out there second guessing, shrinking, explaining your worth to someone who thinks commitment ends at character creation, don't wait for your breaking point. Be your own glitch in their system. Pack your bags, take the dog, and let the logout screen hit them on the way out. Thanks for watching Drama with Ted and Tina. Hit like if you've ever carried a relationship harder than his GPU carried his ego. Subscribe for more stories where karma isn't a concept, it's a court date. And trust me, next time we're dragging a sister who stole her sibling's inheritance, faked a mental breakdown, and still managed to get caught on live stream. Stay tuned.